Hello, and welcome to the 18th episode of TB76's TSW Thoughts, where I, from my own brutally honest perspective, examine TSW products and go over what I like, dislike, and what can be improved. I'm an independent reviewer, so I'm therefore not affiliated or endorsed by Dovetail Games, so I am therefore free to praise or criticise as I see fit. Today we are looking at the latest release from Just Trains' 1986 catalogue, WCML Crewe to Preston, which covers the section between Crewe and Preston through the Lancashire coalfields towards Preston. The section is markedly more industrial in nature than the more rural WCML SHAP DLC from Preston to Carlisle. So without further ado, let's get into the overview. The WCML Crewe to Preston DLC runs for about 51 miles or 82 kilometres between the railway town of Crewe and Preston, plus an additional 9 miles or 15 kilometres worth of track for the industrial and other lines. The line, as previously stated, is depicted as it was in 1986, as is the theme with Just Trains' routes. The line runs through Warrington Bank Quay, Wigan North Western and Leyland towards Preston. The section between Crewe and Weaver Junction is also included, which was first featured in Spirit of Steam, as depicted as it was before the electrification of the West Coast Main Line as part of the modernisation plan of 1955, and the line beyond Weaver Junction to Glasgow Central was electrified in the early 70s and completed fully in 1974. The line also includes a few other sections, which are as follows: the Newton-le-Willows and Earlstown section, plus the electrified secondary line between Wigan and Warrington, the Manchester to Liverpool line at Warrington Central, although it isn't accessible, but it does run over the WCML. Going under the WCML at Banquet is the line to Arpley Sidings, Fiddler's Ferry Power Station and on to Widnes. The branches to Haydock Oil Terminal, Bickershaw Quarry, Parkside Quarry, and finally for the first time to Deepdale Coal Depot in Preston, which forms part of the former branch line between Preston and Longridge. Fun fact, the old station at Longridge is now a visitor centre and cafe, as seen in the pictures here. It is worth noting that while most of the line is electrified, set to the UK standard of 25 kV AC, a lot of the industrial lines and sidings are unelectrified, so require diesel-only operations, although some sidings are electrified. Interestingly, the section between Winwick Junction to Newton-le-Willows and Goulburn Junction was electrified in 1973 with the electrification to Glasgow Central, but wouldn't be for another 40 odd years with electrification of the lines between Manchester and Liverpool that electric passenger trains would finally serve Newton-le-Willows and Earlstown in form of the Class 319s, until they were superseded by the Class 323s and 331s. Of course, during the setting of the route, Newton-le-Willows would be served by electric power parcels trains and electric power freight trains that come through, but for passengers it is pretty much diesel. The rolling stock by default doesn't include anything new, but new variants and upgrades to the existing motive power. The main electric locomotive is the Class 86/4, which first came to the game as the Class 86/2 in July 2025. The main difference being that the 86/2 are primarily express passenger locomotives, while the 86/4s are more mixed traffic locomotives with different bogies and suspension. These would later be converted to other subclasses like the 86/3s for parcels work. Like the 86/2s, the 86/4s come in both BR Blue and Intercity liveries, with variations such as pantographs, high intensity headlights and RCH cables. The visual main difference being the manual in the cab of the 86/4, black tape on the tap changer and reversers as opposed to the red tape on the 86/2, the lack of nameplates for the 86/4, and bodywork textures between the /2 and /4 variants. Additionally included is 86426/ E3195 in 60s-era electric blue livery, which the class first wore from their introduction, akin to 3137/86259 Les Ross, which I saw at Preston and Wigan Northwestern. However, 86426 was scrapped in the mid-2000s. Here is a comparison of the sounds in-game versus real life, which I filmed in Preston. The in-game sounds are sourced from AP, like the Class 87. The other three are of course the Class 08 Shunter that in its JT forms have appeared since Blackpool branches, the Class 20 which first appeared as a DLC for the Tees Valley but now included in BR Blue, as well as a Domino headcode box and the headcode discs removed. The rail freight livery has texture updates compared to the original DTG textures, as well as slow speed controls in the cab. Additionally, it comes with new horn sounds which I will compare now. Finally, we have the Class 47, which has been a staple of JT's DLCs, but this time we have the 47/3 as opposed to the 47/4, which the /3 is used more for freight work and doesn't have any train heating capabilities. These are filled with slow speed control for loading and unloading coal on merry-go-round trains or on the run between Bickershaw or Parkside Collieries to Fiddler's Ferry Power Station. These come in BR Blue or Rail Freight Grey. Plus, I will quickly compare the idle and cab sounds plus the cabs of the /3 and /4 from Blackpool branches and North Transpennine. I will end this section with a demonstration of how to use the slow speed setup. Additionally, you will need to activate the AWS cab end lever to activate the cab, or else it won't work and you'll be going nowhere. The stations on the route are of course depicted as they were back in 1986, and the stations of Winsford, Hertford and Acton Bridge, which previously featured on Spirit of Steam, are depicted in their rebuilt states after the electrification of the 60s, which now I'll do a comparison to them on both routes. Warrington Bank Quay and Wigan Northwestern are also depicted in their rebuilt states following the electrification in the 70s, with Bank Quay being rebuilt in 1973 and Northwestern in 1972. Also, Wigan Walgate Station is included. where trains to Manchester, Leeds and Southport run, but that is not accessible by foot from North Western. Here is some footage and pictures of Wigan North Western and Warrington Quay as they appear in the modern era, although I took the pictures for Warrington Quay in 2023. I would have included IRL pictures and footage of Crewe if I had my short holiday to Shrewsbury and the Tallaghlan Railway, but I had to postpone that due to Mum being hospitalised with a broken leg. But I will be going to Crewe in July. Additionally, the pub by Wigan North Western in game is called the Goose and Tracks, whilst in real life it is called the Swan and Railway. The scenery is up to JT's usual high standards as seen on the Blackpool branches and WCML Shap. But for this route we also see a lot of new scenery assets such as this Leyland National Bus, which, well, is the body basis of the Pacers. Yeah, this explains all. Other 80s era vehicles have been modelled, as can be seen here. Some notable sites that have been modelled include, but are not limited to, the Market Hall at Crewe, the Tower of Christchurch, Crewe, the Dutton Viaduct over the River Weaver before Weaver Junction, Acton Grange Viaduct over the River Mersey, the Unilever factory next to Banquay Station, which was a former soap factory by the way, the Vulcan Foundry at Newton-le-Willows, which was where a lot of locomotives were built, the Uncle Joe's Mint Ball factory, All Saints Church Wigan, plus a picture taken of me of the church IRL, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get in on the day I visited. Gidlow Cotton Mill, the Leyland Motorworks where many automobiles were produced, which led me to nickname Leyland the Detroit of Northern England, but don't mention British Leyland, that went down the toilet and took the British motor industry with it. St Walburge's Roman Catholic Church, and a little Easter egg at Deepdale Coal Depot in Preston in the form of the shout out to Tintin57, one of DTG's ambassadors, and is in fact from Preston. He has fully supported Just Trains throughout their TSW endeavour, and I will link an interview which he did with Just Trains, which is worth a listen. Service variation includes electric hauled services from London Euston, Glasgow Central, Blackpool North and to various other destinations across the country, which are hauled by the Class 86 and Class 87 from WCML Shap, which mainly does the Glasgow services. Diesel hauled passenger services that also run on the route are run using the Class 47, although it would be more realistic for these to be hauled by the 47/4s which have ETH. Local passenger services using the 142 from Blackpool branches and the 101 from WCML Shap are drivable between Warrington Quay and Newton-le-Willows and between Preston and Leyland. Freight services include the aforementioned merry-go-round trains to and from Fiddler's Ferry Power Station, speeding freight across the route. Freightliner container services, salt working from the Cheshire side of the route, as Cheshire is well known for salt production, shunting movements for the Class 08, empty stock, parcels and lightweight movements to and from the depots, including Crewe Electric, Crewe Diesel and Wigan Springs branch to name some. The last thing I will cover here is the announcement, which the station announcements are heard at the following stations: Crewe, Warrington Quay, Wigan North Western and Preston, as they would have been conducted by station staff or by a tape machine in an office, I think. The announcements start with a 3-tone chime, similar to what used to start announcements at British stations until around the mid-2000s, as they have largely abandoned the use of a starting chime afterwards. Here is a demonstration.
Platform 4 for the 1541 service to London Euston, calling at Wigan North Western, Warrington Quay, Crewe, Watford Junction and London Euston. First class is situated towards the front of this train. A buffet serving hot and cold refreshments is available on this train.
I will close the overview with a demonstration of the in-cab announcements, as heard here.
I'd like to welcome all passengers who joined us at Preston. This is the 1322 service to Paynton, calling at Crewe, Wolverhampton, Birmingham New Street, Bristol Parkway, Bristol Temple Meads, Taunton, Exeter St David's, Dawlish, Tenmouth, Newton Abbot, Torquay, and Paynton. The next station will be Crewe, which will be arriving at in approximately 36 minutes. Could passengers please ensure that any luggage is placed safely in the racks provided, and that aisles and doorways are kept clear at all times. Thank you.
What I like. The overall quality of the route, as Just Trains have clearly demonstrated on their other two routes, Blackpool Branches and WCML Shap. This puts the quality of a lot of DTG routes to shame, and quite visibly too. The new assets, such as the vehicles like the Leyland buses, this petrol station here near Newton Le Willows, and numerous custom assets for this route, like the church at Wigan for example, adds a lot of depth and character to the route. The route tasks are quite the interesting lot, including the actually licensed Uncle Joe mint balls, which in the interview with Tintin57 they mentioned that the company was very accommodating towards them, and I appreciate Just Trains going the extra mile to get it licensed. The Wigan pie balm is actually a whole pie served in a bread bun, and is a local delicacy. I even saw it at a bakery in Wigan, although I didn't get one myself. Additionally, we have a rugby ball, which has coincidentally won the route tasks on WCML Trent Valley. I have to say, this is the most varied and diverse of Just Trains' routes, which is not squarely focused on majority passenger work, but has a lot of freight work in northwest England's industrial heartlands, which makes for diverse and varied workings. The various freight branches and lines make for a non-linear route, which has been a JT trend since Blackpool Branches, although for their Carlisle-Whitehaven route I'm not quite sure whether that would be just linear or not. We'll have to see near the time. I really like the inclusion of E3137/86426, which I think marks the first time that BR Electric Blue has appeared in the game, although I'm pretty sure that in real life, from what I read, it was actually painted in a modified version of BR Corporate Blue, while in game it looks to me much more like BR Electric Blue. The modelling of the aluminium cast crest which was attached to the locomotives looks very good as well, and again, for the first time we have the aluminium cast crest in game. I also like the BR Mark 1 RMR and the BR Mark 2 FK plus BFK coming to the game, which the BR Mark 1 RMR is a bit like the RMB that came with the 86/2, but has a more modified interior with the lighting arrangements akin to the MK2Fs, and has a kitchen area which is of course not modelled and is depicted behind the shutters, as well as different seating. But it does have the menu like on the RMB, with the prices as what they would be for that era, although the products are more expensive than in the RMB for some reason. I'm not fully sure why. Is that an inflation error? I do not know. I wasn't around then, so I can't confirm anything. The MKFK and BFK are basically the MKD/F versions of the FK we have on Northern Transpennine with the Mark 2A and Bs. I could go on, but we'll be here all day, so let's move on. So what I dislike. Personally, I would be nitpicking if I stated what I dislike. But I personally find when two Class 20s in different liveries like the Rail Freight and BR Blue are coupled together, it's a bit jarring to me, as I would imagine both coupled Class 20s to have the same livery as each other. This may be true to real life for all I know, but it just comes to me as somewhat jarring. And for some strange reason, I don't know why, there was this timetable I couldn't complete because I was being harassed by a Class 47 behind me. I do welcome the announcements on the 86/4, but I find them to be too quiet, especially when you are braking towards a station with the engine noises and you find yourself trying to make out what the muffled announcement is saying while the motors are making the regenerative braking noise. I would appreciate it if they weren't drowned out by the engine noise. What can be improved? The addition as a new DLC, the Class 304 EMU, aka AM4 to the game, so that Winsford, Hertford and Acton Bridge can be served. I know the Crewe Liverpool stopper would only be drivable as far as Acton Bridge, but that would be a ton better than what we have at the moment. Although, in saying that, it may be a bit difficult as there are no surviving examples, and the nearest example is either the Class 308 or the surviving Bury units, the Class 504s, which are preserved at the East Lancashire Railway. It may be possible, it may be, but I don't know. But I put this there as a matter of opinion. So, in conclusion, and in my brutally honest opinion, I think this is Just Trains' best product yet, with a varied and diverse section of workings, freight and passenger, but this doesn't mean that the WCML Shap or Blackpool branches is any less good. They are equally on a good level, especially when it comes to scenery and rolling stock, but the level of detail is on a new scale. And I think Just Trains will continue going forward with their level of detail, good scenery and good routes. So the next review I'm pretty sure will be Blackpool branches, with their new timetable which includes rolling stock from the actual other two add-ons, and so you're not just seeing diesel, they should be electric. And any other reviews will be confirmed in community posts. So, until then, I am basically signing off. Goodbye.